News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moskow.
Karen, we begin with the latest developments to end the war in Ukraine. Top U.S. and European diplomats are gathered in Turkey, but hopes are fading for any major breakthrough. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is due to meet with Turkish leader Recep Tayyip Erdogan, but Russian President Vladimir Putin will not. Here's NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte.
Russia is sending only a lower-level delegation now to Turkey, to these peace talks. It is the Ukrainians who have said, we are ready to sit down with the Russians, to agree a ceasefire, to immediately go into negotiations about the next steps to bring this terrible war to an end.
NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, and in remarks from Doha heard live this morning on Bloomberg Radio, President Trump also said he would not attend the meeting.
I was thinking about going, but it's very tough because of what we're doing today and tomorrow. But, if something happened, I'd go on Friday if it was appropriate. But we have people right now negotiating.
And President Trump also says the U.S. is close to reaching a nuclear deal with Iran.
Iran has sort of agreed to the terms. They're not going to make, I call it in a friendly way, nuclear dust. We're not going to be making any nuclear dust in Iran.
The president referring there to an NBC News report that Iran would be willing to commit not to have nuclear weapons in exchange for sanctions relief. President Trump says he does not want to have to take a violent step if negotiations don't work.
And Karen, the president also touched on trade negotiations with India, saying that country has made a dramatic offer.
India is one of the highest tariff nations in the world. It's very hard to sell into India. And they've offered us a deal where basically they're willing to literally charge us no tariff.
President Trump also says he told Apple CEO Tim Cook not to build in India and that Apple's agreed to expand production in the U.S. The iPhone maker had been shifting manufacturing from India to China to supply the U.S. market.
Nathan, U.S. and Chinese officials met for trade talks in South Korea just days after both sides met in Switzerland and agreed to pause some tariffs for 90 days. Here's Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent.
We're going to go into a series of negotiations. They're going to be fulsome, and we have a lot to talk about, but I think over the next 90 days we can accomplish a lot.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent speaking earlier this morning in Doha. Bloomberg News has learned Trade Representative Jamison Greer met with China's chief trade representative in South Korea this morning.
Karen, let's turn to markets now and some company news, including word this morning that UnitedHealth is facing a criminal probe. Bloomberg's John Tucker joins us with the latest. John, good morning.
And good morning, Nathan. The Wall Street Journal reports the Justice Department investigating UnitedHealth Group for possible criminal Medicare fraud. The paper cites sources as saying this has been an active probe since at least last summer. You'll recall that earlier this week, the CEO, Andrew Whitty, was suddenly replaced. This adds to a long list of problems. The company faces investigations of potential antitrust violations and a civil investigation of its Medicare billing. What's more, the Trump administration is looking to cut federal health spending, and that is a key source of UnitedHealth's success. And of course, nobody can forget one of its executives was gunned down in Manhattan. That led to an online surge of support for the alleged shooter. The company is the worst performer, the Dow Jones Industrial Average so far this year, down 39%. And in pre-market trading, shares right now down over 6%. In New York, I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, John, thank you. Let's run over to retail, which is in the spotlight this morning. Dick's Sporting Goods buying Foot Locker for $2.4 billion. The acquisition would bring together two companies with different business models, with Foot Locker operating 2,400 smaller stores globally and Dick's operating 800 big box stores in U.S. suburbs. Shares of Foot Locker, they're surging this morning, up about 76%.
And Karen, this morning we'll also get earnings from another retail giant. That would be Walmart. Let's get a preview from Bloomberg's Tom Busby.
The key for investors is whether customer spending has changed amid the uncertainty around the Trump tariffs and whether that uncertainty has brought the retailer any new customers looking for lower-priced goods. Of note, Walmart makes about half its revenue from groceries, which are largely immune to those levies. Same-store sales in the U.S. expected to be nearly 4% higher. Comp sales at its Sam's Club warehouse stores should be up nearly 5%. Bloomberg consensus calls for revenue of $166.02 billion on adjusted earnings of 58 cents a share. Tom Busby, Bloomberg Radio.
And that's news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Karen Moskow.
I'm Nathan Hager, and this is Bloomberg.